the second part of our 2023 speech and debate competition. In this set of afternoon speeches, our 7th graders will be presenting their informative speeches. How we started this process was the students narrowed down ideas that they were passionate about, things that they were excited about, things they wanted to know more about, and to give information to the audience about. So they researched several different topics and then narrowed it down to the parts that interested them the most. And then from there, we went through several editing processes and the students edited it down for cohesion. And then we're able to make visual aids like the one that you will see here. So each student will present an informational speech about a topic of their choosing along with a visual aid. The speeches should run between 5 and 7 minutes, but there is no penalty for short time or overtime. Thank you very much. And now for our first presentation.
Hello, my name is Keon Iyer, and the topic of my speech is cybersecurity. Imagine waking up one morning to find all your organization's information leaked. Your market value at an all-time low, your private keys and servers all exposed and exploited. This isn't just a scene from a dystopian movie, but a reality in the world of cybersecurity breaches. In an increasingly digital world, our personal and professional lives are intertwined with technology, making cybersecurity a critical concern for everyone. According to Cybersecurity Ventures, a really popular and trusted cybersecurity magazine, the global cost of cybercrime is expected to reach a staggering $10.5 trillion annually by 2025, up from $3 trillion in 2015. This dramatic rise underscores the severity and scale of cyber threats we face today. Cybersecurity, at its core, involves protecting our computers, networks, servers, and data from digital attacks. It's like a digital shield that guards and protects our personal and professional information. As we move into a more technology-based world, from shopping and banking to healthcare and education, the importance of this digital shield only grows. Still, identifying and understanding cyber threats is our best defense against them. In the vast digital landscape, numerous threats lurk in the shadows. Phishing attacks, where cybercriminals impersonate legitimate organizations to trick people into revealing sensitive data, are one of the most common methods that cybercriminals use. According to the 2021 Verizon Data Breach Investigations report, phishing represents 36% of all breaches. These types of breaches occur to huge organizations all the time. For example, let's take the Nordea Bank incident. This incident occurred when thousands of phishing emails were sent out to employees and customers of Nordea Bank. And when the people clicked on the pop-up, the attackers were granted full admin access to the bank's networks and vault, allowing them to walk right in and take their share of money. Malware, including ransomware and spyware, is another prevalent threat. The FBI's 2020 Internet Crime Report states that losses due to malware were over $4.2 billion. Malware can cause data loss, financial loss, and significant disruption to operations to businesses. For example, let's take the SolarWinds attack from 2020. This attack targeted multiple US government agencies and hundreds of private companies. The attackers were able to get onto the main servers of those companies and install malware on them, leaving them vulnerable and exploited. Advanced Persistent Threats, or APTs, are long-term targeted attacks often used to reach high-security networks. According to Symantec's 2021 Threat Landscape Trends report, APTs are still a significant threat to organizations. APTs can cause massive data breaches, as well as intellectual property theft. For a major example of this would be the Titan Rain attack from 2003. This attack, believed to be orchestrated by a group of Chinese hackers, targeted multiple US government agencies with the goal of revealing sensitive country secrets. They launched this attack on bodies like NASA and the FBI, who were immediately alerted of it and were able to shut it down. And of course, in the world of global cybersecurity, we have DOS and DDoS attacks. DOS attacks, standing for denial of service, is an attack where a single system intentionally overwhelms another system's resources so that it cannot respond to service requests. This is typically done by flooding the target system with unnecessary requests, causing it to slow down or crash. A DDoS attack, or a distributed denial of service attack, is an attack where an attacker uses multiple compromised or controlled systems to launch the attack on the target system. These multiple systems overwhelm the target system with unnecessary requests, eventually leading to a denial of service. A major example of a DDoS attack would be the 2017 Equifax breach. This breach leaked the personal information of over 147 million people. If you didn't know, Equifax is a multinational consumer credit reporting agency and is one of the 3 largest in its field. This breach wasn't just a breach of data, it was a breach of trust, leading to a massive loss in consumer confidence and significant financial consequences. While the threat's real and the impact severe, there are steps that people can take to protect themselves. Firstly, you can secure your private network. Ensuring that your network is secure, encrypted, and hidden can prevent unauthorized access to it and protect the devices connected to it. Secondly, make sure your employees are aware to not click on shady emails on administrator computers. This type of education will make sure that your company is less susceptible to phishing or ransomware attacks. Furthermore, opt for automatic software updates. Software updates often include the latest security patches for vulnerabilities that have been discovered since the last version of the software was released. By enabling automatic updates, you ensure that your software, including your operating system and applications, are up to date with the latest security patches. In addition to these measures, there are firms out there like McAfee and IBM Security who are also fighting to help businesses fend off the cybercriminals trying to get information off of them. At the moment, IBM Security has successfully defended 14 businesses with its protection services, which is something you might want to consider if you have an unprotected business. McAfee also offers many cyber attack prevention services. Being a $14 billion company, its protection services are far more premium compared to IBM Security's, and it has defended over 1,000 companies by the time it has been up. To conclude, the world of cybersecurity is complex and evolving, but by taking these steps and understanding cyber threats, the common threats we face, and learning how to protect ourselves, we can navigate this digital battlefield with confidence. As we've seen, knowledge is our best defense in the digital realm, reinforcing our thesis that understanding cyber threats and their impacts is crucial. In a world where our digital footprint continues to expand, let's commit to staying informed, practicing safe online behavior, and advocating for better and safer cybersecurity measures. Remember, in the fight against cyber threats, we are the first line of defense. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Isabel. My speech title is Jinwei Tries to Follow the Sea. Have you ever heard the phrase, you can do anything you put your mind to? Well, there's a character in Chinese storytelling who gives us an extreme example of determination in the face of hardship by using all of her continuing outer life to carry out the task that seems impossible. Let's learn more about Jinwei, the girl who never gave up through her story through different retellings. Legend tells us that in ancient time there was a lovely girl named Jinwei, the youngest daughter of Emperor Yandi, legendary ruler of China. Jinwei loved the water and spent many happy hours playing by the sea. She was known to be a good swimmer, and she had no fear of the sea. The young girl could often be found happily chasing waves along the shore. Sadly, one day, a giant wave came ashore and knocked Jinwei down. On its return to the sea, the wave carried the girl along with it. It was in this way that the brave Jinwei drowned. Jinwei was not lost forever, however. After a spirit was leaving her body, it transformed into a bird. This bird, with its white beak, pink claws, and shiny black feathers, was quite pretty. It flew up to a mountain that overlooked the sea, and there it made its home. The bird often flew over the sea, crying, 精卫, 精卫. Over time, people began to call this bird the 精卫 bird. The 精卫 bird felt angry that the sea could drown people. It came up with a plan. I will fall in the sea so that it disappears and cannot hurt people anymore. Finally, the sea decided to show its strength. It said, little bird, your twigs and pebbles will never succeed in fooling me in. I am too vast. With defiance, 精卫 replied, even if it takes me thousands of years, I will succeed in folding you in. And so the bird continues, even today, to fly over the sea, dropping in twigs and pebbles. There is a classical version recorded in the text, the Classic of Mountains and Seas, also known as 山海经, from around the era of the Han Dynasty beginning in 200 BC. This classic Chinese text is a collection of stories about the places and animals of Chinese legends, and is probably our first version of the story that was written down. The poem Tao Qian from the 6th dynasty from the early 3rd century AD to the late 6th century AD mentioned Jing Wei in his 13 points upon reading the Godways through mountains and seas, where he made a connection between Jing Wei and Xing Tian and other Chinese gods. In more modern writings, Jing Wei has a conversation with the sea where the sea teases her, saying that she would be able to fold it up even in 1,000,000 years. In response, she says that she will spend 10 million years, even 100 million years, whatever it takes to fold up the sea so that others would not have to die as she did. From this story comes the Chinese phrase, a full character saying 精卫填海, which is a mode to help teach children and show them examples of determination and strength in the face of seemingly impossible odds. So now we have learned that Jing Wei shows us persistence, kindness, and strength. Why can't we be more like this? Perhaps when we persist, we will have a greater sense of accomplishment than others. When we are kind, we will be happier than others. Why don't you give it a try? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jolie Michaels, and what I will be presenting today is about old medical procedures. Your health is one of the most important things to you. Organs like your brain keep you alive and functioning, and without a healthy body, you would die. That's why when you're sick, people go to the doctors and they will fix you up. When you think of the procedures done in hospitals, the surgeries, the medicines they prescribe, it all seems to make sense. However, as humans have evolved, so have our methods of treatment. Older procedures weren't as normal as you would think. So that begs the question, what were some of the strangest procedures? I'm sure that everyone here has gotten a common cold. Now, I usually treat this as taking some Tylenol, maybe some aspirin, and then curling up in a ball and binge watching television. You see, before we had the comfort of reality TV, there was this process known as bloodletting. The history of bloodletting dates back almost 3,000 years to ancient Greece. The idea was that there are 4 important humors, which is what Hippocrates, a Greek physician, first suggested. These 4 important humors, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, needed to be kept at a stable balance. Imbalances in one of these humors was supposed to be the cause of illness. So when blood was found in one of the most important humors, the process of bloodletting was born. The process started by usually making a break in a vein, usually with a tool called a fleam, or a sharp wooden stick. Fleams were typically made of metal. They had multiple little tools connected at the handle, and each one was sharp and pointed, which could be used for hitting the vein. The whole item could fold, making it an older version of a modern-day pocket knife. The vein that the doctor chose could differ. A physician who was working a few years after the time of Hippocrates was named Galen of Pergamum. He suggested that the best place to hit is the vein behind the ear. Later procedures focused on the median cubital vein, which is found near your elbow. As the Middle Ages rolled around, the process of bloodletting started to become more popular. Eventually started picking up the practice of using leeches. So I've talked about the history and why it was used, but how did it affect those who had the process done to them? Recent studies show that the process of bloodletting wasn't as effective as commonly thought. In fact, back in the medieval times, it was actually used as a full-time solution, using it to cure everything and prevent everything. However, for example, one study done by Dr. Pierre Lewis in the 1800s, where he performed on 77 patients with pneumonia, starts to disprove that. He bled half of the subjects within the earlier days and the other half in the later days. In his study called The Researches and the Effects on Some Bloodletting in Some Inflammatory Diseases and the Effect of Tartaritis antimony in the Investigation in pneumonitis, he commented how the subjects' blood in the early half of their days had a death rate of about 44%, while the subjects' blood in the later half of their days had a death rate of about 25%. This led him to his theory that the subjects' blood in the later days had already been through the worst part of their illness, which means that bloodletting wasn't actually helping them. Another pair of scientists who contributed to the disproving of bloodletting in the 1800s was Robert Koch and Louis Pasteur. Together they helped create the germ theory, which is what we know today, tiny microorganisms causing disease. This continued to go against the original theory of Hippocrates' 4 humors, which means that bloodletting wasn't actually helping people. Do we still have bloodletting? Yes, in other ways. You see, as the 1900s came along, the process of bloodletting started to become very less popular. It eventually evolved into what we know today as leech therapy, or MLT, medicinal leech therapy. How it works is they help combat inflammatory diseases, and the leeches will suck out the blood and secrete saliva, which help the area heal more successfully. Another process that I would like to talk about today is lobotomy. It's also known as the greatest wrongdoings in medical history. The process was aimed towards people with schizophrenia and epilepsy, and it started by making incisions in the frontal lobe and then cutting the nerve ends from the frontal lobe and the thalamus. The idea was that these are cut, it would simply stop allowing the abnormal stimuli to be sent throughout your brain. The first person to try this was Gottlieb Burckhardt, and he performed on 6 patients. 2 of the 6 died. Another major attempt at lobotomy was made by Antonio Igaz Muniz. He and another doctor, Amelia Luna, did a process where they drilled holes into a patient's head, then injected alcohol directly into the patient's head, the idea was that the alcohol would rework and disrupt the neuron tracks between the frontal lobe and the thalamus, which means that the mentally ill patients go back to their homes. While the process was still extremely questionable, both Muniz and Lima performed on about 40 people before their work was adopted by other physicians. Walter J. Freeman started to create his own methods of lobotomy with his transorbital lobotomy. Transorbital lobotomy used a tool to reach the back of the eye socket, penetrating the skin and bone, and then severing the nerve fibers. This was used for cases that weren't as serious. One of the main reasons that lobotomy was stopped was because of the long-lasting and permanent effects that were given to the people who had it done to them. These included dementia, obesity, infection, apathy, and profuse bleeding. Another reason it was stopped was because it was recalled to be inhumane and brutal. Most people thought that having a lobotomy done to you was taking away your free will as a person, because most people came out of lobotomies as completely different people. Lobotomy is not around any longer, but we have gone over methods of treatment to help people with epilepsy and schizophrenia, which is what they originally targeted. Most of these include medicines to help stop seizures and hallucinations. One study published by the Canadian Medical Journal, written by Dr. Miller, was a type of follow-up for lobotomies. From 1948 to 1952, around 150 lobotomy patients were monitored. Each patient was given a score based on a point system. You got more points for being out of the hospital and well than in the hospital and needing more care. The average age for the patients was about 50, and most of the patients were female. In 1962, another follow-up study was done, and they were again scored on the same system. 116 patients were tested again, and 60% showed no improvement, 22% showing more improvement, and 18% showing significant deterioration. Around 60% of people have been discharged from the hospital by 1962. So, to conclude, procedures like bloodletting and lobotomy aren't done anymore. They have paved the path for other procedures to follow their places. The past is not something to be forgotten, but it's also not something to be frowned upon. We can learn from our past mistakes of procedures like lobotomy and focus more on how we can continue to evolve with procedures like speech therapy from bloodletting. Thank you.
My name is Leah Martinez, and I'm going to be talking about elephants. Elephants can be found living in savannas, grasslands, and forests. Not only are they impressive in their massive size, stunning intelligence, and caring instincts, they are an integral part of maintaining the ecosystems. Despite their students' contribution on living on the world's largest continent, their lives remain endangered. These creatures are incredibly important in maintaining biodiversity and helping other species to grow. A female elephant is called a cow, and a male elephant is called a bull. A baby elephant is called a cat. And elephants are herbivores, so this is a picture of them. You can tell the difference between an Asian and an African elephant because their ears. And there are two certain species of elephants, the Asian and African. They are afraid of bees, and even female elephants can be pregnant for a whole 2 years. Elephants are important in biodiversity because they help trample forests, making densely grasslands for other species to coexist. And they also make riverbeds, dry riverbeds when rain falls on, for other species to drink. But elephants still remain endangered. Recently, the infrastructure such as roads, canals have been fragmenting their habitat, and also agricultural development. But elephant and another danger facing African elephants is poaching. Poaching is wildlife trafficking and killing of wildlife. Since 2007, ivory poaching has more than doubled since 2007. However, elephants aren't in it alone. WWF, World Wide Fund for Nature, are preventing poaching and wildlife killing by reducing ivory stockpiles and controlling ivory ban. That's it.
Hello, my name is Nova Collinju, and my topic about my speech competition is space exploration. One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. This is a famous quote by Neil Armstrong, who was a great asset to space exploration, and also was the first person to walk onto the moon. At the age of 8, my grandfather gave me my first telescope as a Christmas gift. This was my first time that I looked up into the sky and saw the stars and the moon. I was fascinated by how beautiful space was. I was curious how different things in space got their names and how people knew where they were. Space exploration is the use of anatomy and space technology to explore outer space. While space exploration is carried out mainly by astronauts with telescopes, its physical exploration is conducted by uncrewed robot space probes and human spaceflight. Because of advances in science across all disciplines, we can advance new space technologies that benefit our everyday lives while also inspiring a new generation of thinkers, intellectuals, artists, and engineers. The famous scientist and educator Sten Odenwald at the National Aeronautics and Space Administration examines 100 objects that forever altered what we know about the cosmos. From Sputnik to Skylab to the Galileo telescope to the Curiosity rover, some objects are iconic and some obscure, while all utterly important. So today, I'm going to be talking about some famous groundbreaking technologies that had advanced space exploration. Many people back in the 1500s didn't really know about space. Luckily, there was a scientific revolution happening. One of the first people to start changing the basic tenets of popular theories was Galileo, who modified the existing telescope technology by concentrating and improving the apparatus after his initial success. He enlarged objects by 3 diameters with his first telescope. That is, it made objects appear 3 times larger than they were. He then developed a lens system that could magnify objects up to 8 times, and then finally 30 times by refining the design of the lens system. Because of his persistence on modifying the telescope, he was the first to report telescopic observations on the mountains on the moon, the moons of Jupiter, the phases of Venus, and the rings of Saturn. Using his telescope, Galileo found that Venus went through phases just like our moon. But the nature of these phases can be only explained by Venus going around the sun, not the Earth. This was the first scientific challenge that the long-held belief that the planets revolved around the Earth. Moving ahead in the timeline, on October 4th, 1957, the Soviet Union launched Earth's first artificial satellite, Sputnik 1. The successful launch came as a shock to experts and citizens in the United States who had hoped that the United States would complete this scientific advancement first. The Sputnik launch started the space race with the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. The space race led a creation of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration known as NASA. The new organization started functioning on the 1st of October 1958, less than a year after the launch of Sputnik 1. Next up, Skylab. Skylab was the United States' first space station launched by NASA and occupied for about 24 weeks between May 1973 and May 1974. Jared P. Carr, Edward Gibson, and William R. Pogue launched an Apollo Command and Service module on the Saturn IB rocket from Kennedy Space Center in Florida, and the mission lasted 84 days, 1 hour, and 16 minutes. It was operated by 3 separate 3-astronaut crews, Skylab 2, Skylab 3, and Skylab 4 missions. Major operations included an orbital workshop, a solar observatory, Earth observations, and hundreds of experiments. Skylab is important in history because it proved that humans could live and work in space for long periods, and the astronauts studied the sun from space and collected valuable information. 3 successive crews of visiting astronauts carried out investigations of the human body's adaptation to the space environment, studied the sun on unprecedented detail, and undertook pioneering Earth resources observations. But have you wondered how this space stuff has affected our lives here on Earth? But some of the many areas that NASA studies with satellites are solar activity, sea level rise, the temperature of the atmosphere and ocean, the health of the ozone layer, air pollution, and changes in sea ice and land ice. These things can help scientists understand the environment and changes to it. Spacecraft and satellites provide valuable data for monitoring climate patterns, deforestation, pollution levels, and natural disasters. These studies have advanced scientific understanding of water cycles, air quality, forests, and other aspects of the natural environment. You may ask, how does space exploration move forward from here? According to NASA and SSL, which is Space Science Laboratory, future space technologies will rely heavily on robotics and AI to perform maintenance and repairs on the existing space stations while aiding scientists with data collection and analysis. Currently, NASA is working with SSL to test how AI can be used to reach beyond our solar system and help NASA with decision making. Our AI decisions enable more dangerous missions and testing. AI-powered spacecraft could be utilized more efficiently and safely to explore our solar system. Robotic systems will be used to examine other planets and objects in our solar system as precursors to crewed trips, to assist astronauts at the International Space Station, to study the universe, and several other objectives. This also includes autonomous systems, which enable robots, spaceships, and airplanes to operate autonomously in a changing environment. The space industry also utilizes emerging technologies, including 3D printing, to upgrade and scale operations in space. NASA uses 3D printing techniques to create a large-scale engines for space rockets in its Rapid Analysis and Manufacturing Propulsion Technology Project, or RAMP. Also, NASA's 3D printed habitat was a Credential Challenges program competition that aimed to enhance the additive construction technologies required to create a sustenance-dwelling alternatives for Earth, the Moon, Mars, and beyond. And like a scene out of Star Trek, we have BHEX. BHEX is a firm that creates culinary solutions by utilizing various 3D printing technologies. The concept is to provide astronauts with 3D printed meals, just like the replicator in our favorite Star Trek episodes. To conclude, the advances we have are to make better satellites and other technologies so we can see space from another angle and see what deep space has in store for us. We are now making telescopes that are advancing the distance and how we can see a certain star, planet, or other celestial bodies to know what it is made of and gather information. The benefits that we have gotten from these space technologies are big and useful to allow us to make more aware of where things are and how they work. Hopefully, as technology continues to advance, there will be more giant leaps in mankind. Thank you.
Good evening, judges. My name is Sarisha Sriram. Today I'll be presenting on COVID-19. Let's all close our eyes for just 2 seconds and go back 3 years in our lives. The first thing that comes to us is the COVID-19 pandemic. This could be called the darkest period that most of us here have ever faced. I am going to be talking about the COVID-19 pandemic, the effects it had on life and economy, and most importantly, how, with the help of latest technology, we were able to face this battle and put an end to the dark era. The novel coronavirus, also known as SARS-CoV-2, is a class of epidemics with human-to-human transmission. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, 5 mainly mutated strains have emerged so far, namely Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, and most recently, the Omicron variant. Coronavirus is a large, roughly spherical particle with surface projections that make it look like a crown. This is how it got its name, coronavirus. Corona meaning crown. The World Health Organization, or WHO, explains that coronavirus can be spread through an infected person's mouth or nose when they cough, sneeze, speak, sing, or breathe. Most people infected with COVID-19 experience mild to moderate respiratory symptoms and recover without requiring special treatment. However, others become seriously ill and require medical attention. Older people and those with underlying medical problems have a higher chance of becoming more seriously ill. Based on the statistical dashboard in the WHO website, as of November of 2023, we've had 772 million total cases and 6.9 million deaths as a result of COVID-19 worldwide. Just in the United States, we've had 103 million total cases and 1.1 million deaths as a result of this pandemic. Now let's review some of the large-scale consequences as a result of this pandemic. Hospitals reported a shortage of key equipment needed to care for critically ill patients, including ventilators and personal protective equipment, or PPE, for medical staff. Adequate production and distribution of both types of equipment were crucial for caring for patients during this time. According to a report from worldbank.gov, U.S. economy early in the pandemic fell abruptly to 9% below its level at the start of the most recent economic crisis. Unemployment rate jumped to a level not seen since the 1930s and stood at 4.9% in October of 2021, compared with 3.5% in February of 2020. The Secretary General's policy brief on tourism and COVID-19 explains the impacts of COVID-19 on the tourism industry. During the first half of 2020, tourist arrivals globally fell by more than 65%, with a near halt since April. The pandemic brought the international travel industry to an almost total standstill for almost a year. The lockdowns imposed around the world resulted in a 49% decline in activity and a loss to close to $4.5 trillion since 2019. In the beginning of the pandemic, we had no streamlined testing methods. Very soon after that, due to the brilliant work effort of scientists and laboratories, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration approved the RT-PCR test, which is a molecular test that detects genetic material on the surface of the virus. In the early days of the pandemic, we barely had any treatment methods. The guidelines outlined in the National Institute of Health website explained that remdesivir, an antiviral medication, was pretty much the only treatment for COVID-19 back in the day. Unfortunately, this could only be given to adults and children over the age of 12. People who got sick were progressively getting worse and required ventilators for support. But now in 2023, we have pills such as Paxlovid readily available to take to treat the virus as soon as one tests positive. During the pandemic, CDC put out a set of guidelines for us to follow, including social distancing, properly fitted mask wearing, hand washing, and isolation periods if sick with the virus. Although this did slow the spread of the virus, the strategy that really flattened and bent the curve of the number of new infections was the development of new COVID-19 vaccines. The two main types of COVID-19 vaccines given in the United States include the messenger RNA or mRNA vaccine and the vector vaccine. The mRNA vaccine gives our body cells instructions on how to make the proteins found on the surface of the cell. Both the Pfizer-BioNTech and Moderna COVID vaccines use this type of technology. In the vector vaccine, material from the virus is put in a modified version of a different virus. This gives our body cells instruction on how to make copies of the virus and create antibodies which can later be used to fight the virus. Everyone 6 months and older is eligible to get both types of vaccines. At least 2 to 3 doses is required for appropriate coverage. Researchers believe that in the future, new vaccines will be created to target newer variants of the virus. In early 2023, the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine was awarded to Catalin Perico and Drew Wiseman for their work on mRNA technology, which has been very crucial in the fight against COVID-19. I would like to end my speech by mentioning the main reason why I decided to choose this topic. I'm sure that most of you have had some personal experience with someone who had or dealt with the virus, but I had the opportunity to see my mom work through the pandemic as a frontline worker and listen to her stories. This got me more interested in the topic. I would like to end last but not least, I would like to thank all the superheroes helped us during this time, including all the frontline workers, scientists, cleaning crew everywhere, and our wonderful teachers who made sure that our education continued during these troubled times. The past 3 years would most definitely take a prominent spot in history, not only because of the tragedies we faced, but because of the unity and commitment it brought to our world. Thank you.
Hi everybody, thank you so much for joining us for our 2023 speech and debate competition. We are incredibly proud of all of the students who participated today. They did amazing work on their own time, doing research, input from us teachers, and again, they blew us away, not just with their debates that you will get to see later on, but also through the speech presentations that we just saw. So please join me in giving all of our participants today a huge round of applause. Ms. Jones and Mr. Hawkins, our judges, thank you so much for being here today. We super appreciate all of your feedback. The lively debate that we've had between rounds and competitions and presentations has been amazing as well. So once again, thank you so much for your time and support of our program. Audience on Facebook and later on YouTube, thank you so much for joining us today. And we hope that you enjoy this presentation. Thank you so very much.
Very much.